A little girl beaten by stepfather, as her mother smiled until a millionaire CEO heard her cry and, "Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The cold winter evening felt like a blanket of sorrow, covering the small town of Millville. Caleb Whitmore, a millionaire CEO, walked briskly through the quiet streets, his head down, lost in thoughts. It was Christmas Eve, and while the rest of the world was celebrating with family, warmth, and laughter, Caleb felt nothing but emptiness. His phone buzzed in his pocket. More messages from business partners, but no real connection. He shoved the phone back into his coat pocket, barely noticing the cold air that nipped at his skin. The world around him seemed to be moving in fast forward, while he remained stuck in a loop of loneliness. As he passed the old park bench near the lake, something caught his eye. Two small figures huddled together in the snow. His steps slowed, and he squinted to make out what they were. A little girl, no more than 7, with a baby bundled tightly in her arms. Her clothes were worn and soaked with snow, her cheeks flushed with the cold, and her eyes were wide with fear. She was holding her baby sister so tightly, trying to shield her from the biting wind, but there was no escape from the cruelty of the night. Caleb's heart clenched as he approached them. He had almost walked by, lost in his world of business and self-imposed isolation, but the sound of her voice stopped him. "Please, don't hurt us," she whispered, her words barely audible through the cold. His blood ran cold. He knelt down beside them, trying to make himself less intimidating. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice trembling more than he had expected. The little girl looked up at him, her face streaked with tears and dirt. She was shaking, her small body barely able to hold the weight of her baby sister. "She hurts us. She doesn't care about us," the girl whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Caleb's heart shattered at her words, and his instincts kicked in. He gently took the baby sister from her arms, wrapping them both in his warm coat. "I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe now. I'll take care of you," he promised, not fully understanding why he was making this vow to two strangers. He called for help, his voice more urgent than he had ever been in his life. He didn't care about his meeting or the business deal waiting for him. In that moment, nothing mattered except the two fragile lives in his arms. He placed them in his car and drove straight to the nearest hospital, not daring to look away from the little girl's tear-streaked face. He didn't know what had happened to her, but he was about to find out. The coldness in his heart that had built up over years of isolation began to thaw with every mile they traveled, and in the back seat, the soft sound of the baby's quiet breaths brought him the smallest sense of peace. Caleb's world was about to change forever. He couldn't save them from their past, but maybe, just maybe, he could give them a future. The harshness of the world outside didn't matter now. Inside the warmth of his car, he was no longer alone. A little girl beaten by stepfather, as her mother smiled until a millionaire CEO heard her cry and, "Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much." The sound of the rain tapping against the car windows was almost soothing as Caleb Whitmore drove through the dark streets toward the hospital. In the back seat, the little girl, who had introduced herself as Emily, was huddled against the window, clutching her baby sister, Luna, tightly. Caleb glanced at the rearview mirror, his heart breaking at the sight of the two fragile souls. It was strange to think that just a few hours ago, he was walking alone, unaware that his life was about to be irrevocably changed. As he drove, he couldn't stop thinking about what Emily had said. "She hurts us. She doesn't care about us." The words echoed in his mind, and he couldn't help but wonder what kind of life these two little girls had been forced to endure. What kind of mother would allow that to happen? His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as anger bubbled inside him. He had built an empire from nothing. But in that moment, none of his wealth or success mattered. He wanted to make things right for these two girls. He wanted to protect them. The hospital lights were a blur as Caleb pulled into the emergency room entrance. A nurse quickly rushed to his car as he opened the door. "She needs help now," Caleb said urgently, lifting Luna into the nurse's arms. Emily hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly let go of her sister, her small hand trembling. The nurse gave him a reassuring nod, but Caleb could see the concern in her eyes as she rushed Luna inside. He turned to Emily, who was now sitting in the back seat, her wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. "Are you okay?" Caleb asked softly, trying to mask the turmoil he felt. Emily didn't answer right away. She just looked down at her hands, which were tightly clasped in her lap. "Where's my sister?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb's heart broke for her. "She's going to be okay. The doctors are going to help her," he promised, his voice thick with emotion. Emily looked up at him, her big brown eyes searching his face, as if trying to determine if she could trust him. "Are you going to leave us?" she asked, her voice trembling. Caleb was taken aback by the question. He had never been a father, never had the opportunity to care for someone like this. But something inside him told him that he couldn't just walk away. "No, Emily," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. "I'm not going anywhere." They sat in silence for a few minutes, the sound of the rain still pattering against the car roof. Caleb watched as Emily slowly began to relax, her shoulders loosening just a bit. The fear that had clouded her face earlier seemed to dissipate, and she finally let out a shaky breath. "Thank you," she said softly, almost as if she was unsure of how to express her gratitude. Caleb smiled at her, a small, sad smile. "You don't have to thank me. I just want to make sure you're safe." The minutes stretched on as they waited in the hospital parking lot. Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play here, something that connected him to these two girls in a way he couldn't yet understand. He had always prided himself on being in control, on being the one who called the shots. But right now, everything felt out of his hands. He glanced over at Emily, who was staring out the window, her eyes distant. He didn't know what the future held for them, but he knew that he couldn't just leave them to fend for themselves. He had to find a way to help them, to make things right. As the door to the hospital swung open, Caleb's thoughts were interrupted by a doctor's voice. "Mr. Whitmore, you can come in now." Caleb stood up, his legs feeling heavier than usual. He walked into the hospital with Emily by his side, and as they entered the waiting room, he realized that this was just the beginning of a long, uncertain journey. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, he could help these two girls find the safety and love they had been denied for so long. A little girl beaten by stepfather, as her mother smiled until a millionaire CEO heard her cry and, "Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories." Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The hours that followed were a blur. Caleb sat in the sterile hospital waiting room, his mind racing as he tried to process everything that had happened. He kept glancing at Emily, who was sitting across from him, clutching the sleeve of her worn-out jacket. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, and her small hands fidgeted nervously in her lap. She had been so brave when they arrived at the hospital. But Caleb could see that the trauma of what she had endured was starting to set in. He wanted to say something comforting, but the words felt stuck in his throat. What could he say to a little girl who had been through so much? What could he offer her that would make any difference? A doctor eventually approached, breaking the silence. "Mr. Whitmore?" Caleb stood up immediately, his heart racing. "How are they?" he asked, the words rushing out before he could stop them. "Both of them are stable now," the doctor said, offering a reassuring smile. "We're still monitoring them, but they'll be okay." Caleb breathed a sigh of relief, but the weight of the situation didn't lift. Emily, still sitting quietly, didn't react. She hadn't said a word since they arrived. Caleb's heart broke for her. "Can I see them?" he asked. The doctor nodded and led him down a narrow hallway, with Emily trailing behind. They stopped outside a room where a nurse was standing guard. Caleb peered inside, and for the first time, he saw Luna up close. She was small, barely a year old, and had the faintest bruise on her cheek. Caleb's stomach twisted at the sight. He had no idea how someone could hurt a child so helpless. Luna was sleeping soundly, her tiny body curled up in a hospital bed, IVs and monitors keeping track of her vitals. "She's a fighter," the nurse said softly. "She'll recover, but she's been through a lot." Caleb's heart sank, but he knew he couldn't afford to fall apart now. These girls needed him. He turned to Emily, who was standing quietly behind him. She wasn't looking at her sister. Instead, she was staring at the floor, her expression unreadable. Caleb crouched down to her level, trying to catch her attention. "Emily, your sister is going to be okay. The doctors are taking care of her." Emily didn't respond. She just nodded, as though she were trying to believe him but couldn't. Caleb's heart broke for her. He wanted to do more, to give her something to hold on to. He reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now, Emily. I promise you, no one is going to hurt you again." She looked up at him then, her big brown eyes wide and full of confusion. "But why are you helping us?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Caleb hesitated, his heart heavy. "Because everyone deserves to be safe, Emily. No one should have to go through what you and Luna have been through." Emily stared at him for a long moment, as though she were trying to understand what he was saying. Then, slowly, she nodded. Caleb didn't know what the future held for them, but in that moment, he knew he couldn't walk away. He had already made a promise to these girls, and he intended to keep it. He turned to the doctor and nurse. "What happens now?" he asked. "We'll keep Luna for observation overnight," the doctor explained. "But she should be okay to leave soon. As for Emily, we'll need to run some tests to make sure she's physically okay, but emotionally, she's going to need support." Caleb nodded, his mind already racing with plans. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going to let them go back to the nightmare they had come from. He would find a way to give them a better life. As they walked back to the waiting room, Emily spoke for the first time since they had arrived. "Are you going to take us home with you?" she asked, her voice small and hesitant. Caleb smiled gently, although his heart was heavy with the weight of her words. "Yes, Emily. I'm going to take care of you both. You're not alone anymore." She looked up at him, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Caleb couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope as well. It was going to be a long road ahead, but he was ready to fight for them. He had no idea what it would take, but for the first time in years, Caleb Whitmore felt like he had a purpose beyond the cold world of business. He had found something worth fighting for, a little girl beaten by stepfather. As her mother smiled until a millionaire CEO heard her cry, and hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Caleb spent the next few days making sure that Emily and Luna were well cared for, his mind constantly running through options to provide a stable, safe environment for them. He knew that the emotional scars they carried would take much longer to heal than any physical injuries. But at least, for the first time in their lives, they were away from the violence and fear that had consumed them for so long. He had arranged for Emily to see a therapist, someone who specialized in trauma, while Luna remained under the care of the best pediatricians. Caleb, although overwhelmed, felt a growing sense of responsibility toward them. The more time he spent with the girls, the more he realized how much they needed him. Emily, despite her quiet demeanor, had begun to open up a little, though it was clear that she was still processing everything. Caleb tried to be patient, giving her space, but always offering her kindness and reassurance. He wasn't sure if he was doing everything right, but he was doing his best. One evening, as they sat down to dinner in his apartment, Caleb noticed Emily staring at the empty chair across from her, the one that had once been filled by her mother. "Emily," Caleb said softly, "is everything okay?" She blinked, as if coming back to the present. "I miss my mom," she said in a small voice. Caleb's heart tightened at the rawness in her words. "I know you do, sweetheart," he said gently, trying to keep his voice steady. "I know it's hard, but I promise you, you're safe here now, and I'm here for you." She nodded slowly, but didn't say anything else. Caleb's thoughts wandered to Emily's mother. What kind of person would leave their children in such an awful situation? He couldn't understand it, but he knew that blaming Emily's mother wouldn't help anyone. They were both victims in a system that had failed them. He couldn't change the past, but he could change their future. That was something he had control over. Over the next few days, Caleb continued to keep a close watch on both girls. He made sure they had everything they needed, from the right medical care to emotional support. But there was still something missing. It wasn't just the absence of their mother, but the absence of a home. The apartment felt sterile, a place for business, not for building memories. Caleb knew it wasn't enough. It wasn't the kind of place Emily and Luna needed to feel safe, to feel at home. He began making plans to move them into a larger house, somewhere more permanent. A place where they could start fresh. It would be a big step, but he was ready to take it. As he began searching for the right house, Caleb reflected on everything that had led him here. The ruthless businessman who had built an empire from the ground up was now consumed with the desire to help these girls find peace. He had never considered himself a family man. In fact, he had convinced himself that he didn't need anyone. But now, with these two girls in his life, something had shifted inside of him. He was learning what it meant to care for others in a way he never had before. The thought of giving them a proper home filled him with a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. He wanted them to have a childhood full of love, laughter, and security, not fear and pain. Emily and Luna had already endured too much. It was time to make things right for them. Caleb knew that their healing journey would be long and difficult, but he was determined to see it through. He was no longer just a CEO. He was becoming something much more important: a protector, a father figure, and a source of love for these two little girls who had been let down by the world. As he sat in his office, reviewing the house listings on his computer, his phone buzzed with a text message. It was from his lawyer. The message read, "I've arranged everything. The paperwork is ready for you to adopt Emily and Luna whenever you're ready." Caleb's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't expecting the adoption process to move this quickly, but he was more than ready. He could offer them a future, a real future, where they wouldn't have to look over their shoulders in fear anymore. He could give them a name, a home, and most importantly, the love they so desperately needed. With the paperwork in place, Caleb began planning the next steps, knowing that the hard work was just beginning. But he wasn't afraid anymore. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, because now he had a family to fight for. A little girl beaten by stepfather, as her mother smiled until a millionaire CEO heard her cry, and, "Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much." Caleb sat in his spacious office, staring at the paperwork in front of him. The adoption forms for Emily and Luna had been prepared. Everything was in place for the next big step. His lawyer had sent him a reminder to sign them, but the weight of the decision felt heavier than he had expected. It was one thing to offer shelter, to provide them with care, but adopting them would mean a permanent commitment, a promise that he would be there, no matter what. It was a promise he was ready to make, but it still made his stomach turn. He glanced at the clock on his desk. It was late in the afternoon, and he had a meeting in an hour. But he couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just thinking about himself, his career, his business empire. He was thinking about Emily and Luna, the future he had promised them. He took a deep breath and reached for the pen. Just as he was about to sign, his phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was a call from the hospital. His heart skipped a beat. "Hello?" He answered, his voice tense. "Mr. Whitmore, this is Dr. Harris from the hospital. I'm calling about Luna," the doctor said. "There's something we need to discuss." Caleb's chest tightened. "What's wrong? Is she okay?" "It's nothing life-threatening, but we found some signs that suggest she may have been exposed to more trauma than we originally thought," the doctor explained. "We want to run a few more tests just to be sure." Caleb's mind raced as he processed the words. Trauma. What did that mean? Had her stepfather done more to her than he had seen? "I'll be there right away," Caleb said, his voice filled with urgency. He hung up the phone and quickly grabbed his coat. Without a second thought, he left the office, leaving the adoption papers behind. Emily and Luna needed him now. Caleb arrived at the hospital in record time, his mind still spinning with questions. He rushed into the hospital and made his way to Luna's room. As he stepped inside, the sight of the small child hooked up to monitors made his heart ache. He had seen her earlier that week. So small, so fragile, but now the weight of her condition seemed even more real. Dr. Harris was standing by her bedside, flipping through her medical charts. "Mr. Whitmore," the doctor said, looking up from the chart. "Luna has been showing signs of emotional distress more than what we'd expect for a child her age. We believe there's a chance she's been subjected to more than just neglect." Caleb's breath caught in his throat. "What do you mean?" he asked. his voice barely a whisper. "We've found signs of physical trauma, in addition to the emotional scars," the doctor continued. "It's possible that she's been physically abused in ways that are not immediately apparent." Caleb's mind reeled as the doctor's words sank in. Luna had already been through so much, and now, to hear that she had been physically harmed by the very people who were supposed to protect her, it was unbearable. He sat down in the chair next to the bed, his hand resting lightly on Luna's small hand. He couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of guilt. Had he done enough to protect her? Had he missed something? "What happens now?" Caleb asked, trying to hold himself together. "We'll continue the tests and work on a treatment plan," Dr. Harris said. "But we'll also need to involve Child Protective Services. It's a sensitive situation, and we want to ensure that she's in a safe environment." Caleb nodded. He didn't want to think about the possibility of Luna being taken away, but he knew it was the right thing to do. They couldn't risk sending her back to her abusive past. The thought of it made his stomach churn. Caleb sat with Luna for hours, not moving from her side, his mind consumed with the decisions that lay ahead. He was starting to understand the depth of what it meant to be responsible for these girls, not just as a guardian, but as someone who would fight to keep them safe, to give them a future. As the night drew on, Caleb stood up and kissed Luna's forehead softly, promising her that he would always be there. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for sure: he would never let her, or Emily, go back to the pain they had known. They were his family now, and he would fight for them, no matter the cost. A little girl beaten by stepfather. As her mother smiled until a millionaire CEO heard her cry and, "Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much." Caleb spent the next few days in constant motion, as the paperwork for the girl's adoption loomed over him like a shadow. But it wasn't just the formalities that occupied his thoughts. There was an undeniable emotional toll that came with watching Emily and Luna begin to heal, each in their own way. They were no longer just two strangers in his life. They had become a part of him, and he couldn't imagine life without them. Still, their past was like an invisible weight they carried with them. Emily, for all her quiet strength, had moments where the past would break through her hard shell. Late at night, Caleb would hear her soft sobs, her grief too deep for words. He had been there for her during the days, but the nights were a different story. Caleb knew it wasn't enough to just provide a safe space. He had to help them overcome the shadows of their past. He made the decision to call in a child psychologist, someone who could help Emily and Luna begin to understand their trauma and begin their journey toward healing. But even as he took those steps, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something, some small but important part of the puzzle. It wasn't just the therapy or the house or the security that mattered. He knew it was love, but something deeper than just love. It was a sense of belonging, something he himself had never experienced. Caleb had spent his entire life building an empire, but his personal life had been a series of empty rooms and hollow achievements. As he watched Emily try to cope with her nightmares and Luna's wide, fearful eyes when strangers approached her, Caleb realized that despite his best efforts, they were still living in a world of isolation. They were together, but it wasn't enough. One morning, as the three of them sat at the breakfast table, Luna was playing with her cereal, spilling bits of it on the table. Emily, who had been silent for most of the morning, suddenly spoke up. "Caleb, I'm scared." Her words were soft but sharp, cutting through the quiet of the room. Caleb looked at her, his heart breaking. "What are you scared of, Emily?" he asked gently, his voice steady, but filled with concern. Emily hesitated, her fingers twisting in her lap. "I don't want to be alone again," she said, her voice trembling. Caleb's chest tightened, and he reached across the table to take her hand. "You're not alone, Emily. You'll never be alone again," he promised. "I'll always be here for you, and I'll protect you." But Emily's gaze stayed fixed on the table. "But you don't really know what it's like," she said quietly. "To be left alone." Caleb's heart cracked. He had no idea what that kind of abandonment felt like. He had been alone in his own way, but he had never known the kind of fear Emily had experienced. "I don't know, Emily," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "But I want to understand. I want to help you feel safe." Emily looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Do you think it's possible to forget? To forget what happened?" Caleb paused, thinking carefully before answering. "I don't think we ever really forget, but I think with time the pain doesn't hurt as much, and we can learn how to live with it, to find peace." Emily didn't say anything for a long time, but Caleb could see the tiniest shift in her expression. It wasn't much, but it was something. He had given her a glimpse of hope. That was all he could do for now. Over the next few weeks, Caleb worked harder than ever to create a sense of normalcy for the girls. They moved into a new house, a real home, not just an apartment. He made sure to fill the house with warmth, filling it with laughter, soft blankets, and the smell of fresh meals. They decorated the house together, picking out paint colors for the walls and choosing a room for Emily and Luna to share. Slowly, things started to feel different. It wasn't perfect. There were still the difficult moments, the times when the past would try to break through. But it was a start, and Caleb could see that Emily and Luna were starting to feel something they hadn't felt before: security. For the first time in a long time, Caleb began to believe in the possibility of a real family. But even as he made all these changes, he knew it wasn't just about providing material things. It was about something deeper, about love, trust, and the slow, painful work of healing. One night, as Caleb tucked Emily into bed, she looked up at him, her eyes still wide and filled with wonder. "I think I can sleep without being scared tonight," she whispered. Caleb smiled softly, brushing a lock of hair away from her face. "I'm so proud of you, Emily. You're so strong." And for the first time in a long time, Caleb felt his heart swell with something he had never truly felt before: the warmth of a family. He wasn't just providing for them, he was building something real, something lasting. He wasn't sure what the future held, but in that moment, he knew one thing for sure: he would fight for this family, no matter what. A little girl beaten by stepfather, as her mother smiled, until a millionaire CEO heard her cry. And, hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind for Caleb. The decision to adopt Emily and Luna was not something that could be undone, and as he stepped into the role of a father figure, he realized the magnitude of the responsibility. The house that had started as a shelter was beginning to feel like a home. But it was still unfamiliar territory for all of them. Emily, for her part, had started to trust him more, though she was still guarded. Caleb knew that even though they had made progress, the road to true healing was long. Every evening, he would sit by her bedside, talking with her about her day. But there were moments when she would fall silent, retreating into herself. He understood that her mind was still trying to process everything she had been through. He could see her working through her feelings, but it was clear that the trauma she had experienced was not something that could be easily forgotten. One evening, as he tucked her in, Emily spoke up unexpectedly. "Caleb," she said softly, "what if I mess everything up? What if you regret taking us in?" Her voice trembled, and Caleb's heart ached for her. He had seen her slowly begin to open up, but her fears were still there, lingering in the background. Caleb sat down on the edge of her bed, his hand resting gently on hers. "Emily," he said, his voice steady, "you could never mess anything up. You and Luna are my family now. I'm here because I want to be. I won't ever regret bringing you into my life." Emily looked up at him, her eyes searching his face, as if looking for the truth in his words. "But I don't know how to stop being scared," she whispered. Caleb felt a lump form in his throat. "It's okay to be scared," he said softly. "What matters is that we face those fears together. And you don't have to do it alone. You have me, and I will always be here for you." Emily's eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she nodded, her small fingers gripping his hand tighter. Caleb could see that she was starting to believe him, even if just a little. As Caleb left her room that night, he couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. It wasn't perfect, but they were building something. Slowly but surely, they were becoming a family. Luna, too, had made progress, though in her own way. She was still so young, but Caleb could see her starting to respond to the warmth and safety he had provided. She had begun to smile more, her laughter echoing through the halls of their new home. It was a beautiful sound, one Caleb had never realized he had been missing. But there was still work to be done. The weight of Emily's past was a heavy burden, one that Caleb knew would take time to lift. He continued to make sure that both girls received the care they needed. Therapy sessions for Emily were now part of their routine, and Luna had regular checkups with the pediatricians to ensure she was recovering physically. Caleb knew that the emotional healing would take longer, and he wasn't going to rush it. He wanted to give them the space to heal in their own time. One day, as Caleb returned home from a business meeting, he found Emily sitting quietly in the living room, staring at an old photo album. The sight of her sitting there, flipping through the pages, stirred something deep inside him. She looked up as he entered, her expression unreadable. "What's wrong, Emily?" Caleb asked gently. She hesitated before speaking, her voice quiet. "I was looking at pictures of my mom," she said. "I know I should be happy here with you, but I miss her. Even though she didn't take care of me, she was still my mom." Caleb sat down beside her, his heart heavy with understanding. "I know, Emily. I know how much you miss her. But I also know that what she did wasn't your fault. And you have to understand that it's okay to love her and still be angry at what happened." Emily looked at him, tears welling up in her eyes again. "I don't want to be angry," she whispered. "I just want to feel normal again." Caleb gently pulled her into a hug, feeling the weight of her pain in his arms. "You will, Emily. You'll get there. And I'll be here every step of the way." As Caleb held her, he realized that no matter how difficult the journey ahead was, they would face it together. His commitment to them wasn't just about providing for their needs. It was about healing, growing, and finding a way to move forward. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't alone. He had a family now, and that was worth everything. A little girl beaten by stepfather, as her mother smiled, until a millionaire CEO heard her cry. And, hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Weeks passed, and though Caleb was determined to create a sense of normalcy, there were still moments of tension. Emily's progress was slow, but he could see the subtle changes. She was talking more, smiling at small moments, and her fears seemed to lessen. But the shadows of the past were never far behind. There were still nights when Caleb would wake to hear Emily's quiet sobs through the walls. She would cry herself to sleep, her heart heavy with memories she couldn't erase. But Caleb was always there when she woke, offering comfort, offering safety. It was on one of those nights, as the moonlight filtered through the curtains, that Emily finally spoke. "I don't know if I can ever forget, Caleb," she whispered, her voice small and fragile. Caleb, who had been sitting in the chair beside her bed, placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to forget, Emily," he said gently. "You just have to know that you're safe now, and you don't have to carry the weight of that past anymore." She looked at him, tears streaking down her face. "But what if I can never be okay again?" she asked, her voice breaking. Caleb's heart clenched at her words. "You're going to be okay, Emily. It's going to take time, but you're not alone. You'll never be alone again." Emily nodded, though her uncertainty was still there, hovering just beneath the surface. Caleb could feel the weight of her doubts. He could see how deeply she still struggled, how the trauma of her past threatened to consume her. But he also saw the spark of hope, however small it might be. She was trying. She was trying to heal. And that, to Caleb, was enough. The next day, he decided to take Emily out, just the two of them. He thought it might help her to step outside the house, to experience something different, something normal. He took her to the park, the sun shining down brightly, the sound of children playing filling the air. It was a stark contrast to the silence of their home, but Caleb hoped it would help. As they sat on a bench, watching the children run around, Emily shifted uncomfortably. "I don't belong here," she said softly, her eyes distant. Caleb turned to her, trying to read her face. "What do you mean?" he asked gently. She shrugged, not meeting his gaze. "These kids have everything. They don't know what it's like to be scared all the time." Caleb felt his heart ache for her. "I know," he said softly. "But you do belong here, Emily. You belong in this world. You deserve to be happy, to feel safe, just like anyone else." Emily was quiet for a long time, her fingers playing with the hem of her jacket. Caleb didn't push her to speak, knowing that these things took time. After a while, she looked up at him. "I want to feel normal," she whispered. Caleb's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and sadness. "You will," he promised. "It's just going to take time." As they left the park, Caleb knew that the journey was far from over. They were making progress, yes, but there was so much more to work through. Emily had a long road ahead of her, but he would be there every step of the way. He was her protector now. The next week, Caleb's commitment to helping the girls heal led him to make another big decision. He contacted a child advocacy group and began the process of getting them into a program that would provide even more specialized care. He knew that Emily needed professional help to deal with the scars that ran deeper than anyone could see. It wasn't enough just to give them a safe home. He needed to give them the tools to truly heal. Emily and Luna had both been through so much. Their journey was just beginning, but Caleb felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. A responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready for, but one he couldn't walk away from. He had already promised to protect them, to give them a life worth living. And now, he had to ensure that promise was kept. In the quiet of his office that night, Caleb looked over the adoption papers again. There was a part of him that still hesitated, unsure of the permanence of it all. But then, he thought of Emily's face, of the way she looked at him when she said she wanted to feel normal. He knew what he had to do. With a deep breath, he signed the papers, knowing that from that moment on, they would be his family, legally and emotionally. He wasn't just a man with a successful career anymore. He was a father, and that realization was both humbling and empowering. No matter the difficulties ahead, no matter how hard it might get, he would never regret this. Because, in the end, love was the only thing that mattered. A little girl beaten by stepfather as her mother smiled until a millionaire CEO heard her cry and, "Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much." Caleb had been living with Emily and Luna for a few months now, and while he had made significant strides in helping them adjust, he knew that the real journey had only just begun. The first few weeks in their new home had been filled with small victories, like Emily smiling more, or Luna finally asking for her favorite stuffed animal at bedtime, but there were still many dark moments where the weight of their past haunted them. Emily, in particular, was the one who seemed to carry the heaviest burden. She had opened up to Caleb a little, but there were still times when she would withdraw into herself, unable or unwilling to share what was going on in her mind. Caleb knew that healing wouldn't be linear, and he wasn't expecting things to be perfect overnight. But there were days when he felt the weight of their past pressing down on him too. One evening, as Caleb was sitting at the kitchen table, reviewing some paperwork, he heard Emily crying softly from upstairs. His heart dropped. He didn't need to think twice. He rushed up the stairs, his feet pounding against the hardwood floors. He knocked lightly on Emily's door before entering. She was sitting on the edge of her bed, her face buried in her hands as she sobbed. Caleb knelt down beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Hey, Emily, what's wrong?" he asked softly. Emily looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen. "I don't know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I just keep thinking about everything, and I can't make it stop." Caleb's heart ached. He knew the nightmares, the flashbacks, were still fresh in her mind. He didn't have all the answers, but he did know one thing. He couldn't let her suffer alone. "It's okay to feel like this, Emily. It's okay to have bad days," Caleb said, his voice filled with compassion. "But you're not alone. I'm here for you. Always." She wiped her eyes and nodded slowly, but Caleb could see that the pain was still there, lurking beneath the surface. He sat with her for a while, just letting her cry, offering the comfort that he could. He didn't rush her to talk, didn't try to fix everything right away. He just sat with her, showing her that it was okay to feel. "I'm sorry, Caleb," Emily said after a while, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just feel like I'm always messing things up." Caleb shook his head. "You haven't messed anything up, Emily. You're healing, and it's okay to take time. You've been through so much. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to do it all at once." Emily looked up at him, her face still streaked with tears, but with a small glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Do you think I can ever be happy again?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Caleb took her hand gently. "I know it's hard to imagine right now, but yes, Emily, you will be happy again." and you deserve that happiness." Emily didn't say anything in response, but Caleb could see a tiny shift in her eyes, a flicker of belief. He didn't know if he could promise her a future without pain, but he could promise her that she would never have to go through it alone. That night, after Emily had fallen asleep, Caleb sat in his own room, reflecting on the conversation. He knew it wasn't just the physical safety that mattered. It was the emotional safety that needed to be nurtured. He was beginning to understand that, to heal, they had to confront the pain, not run from it. Caleb thought about the decision he had made months ago to bring these two girls into his life. It had seemed like the right thing to do, but now, it felt like the only thing he could do. He had made a promise to them, and he wasn't going to back down. As the days passed, Caleb continued to put in the effort, showing up for Emily and Luna, no matter how difficult it got. He enrolled Emily in a specialized therapy program to help her process her trauma, and he made sure that Luna was surrounded by love and attention as well. But there was still something missing. Caleb realized that, in the process of caring for Emily and Luna, he had neglected himself. He had pushed away his own feelings and fears in order to be strong for them. But it was starting to take a toll. He wasn't sure how to balance it all. How to be the father figure, the protector, and still take care of his own heart. It was a difficult realization, but Caleb knew that in order to truly be there for Emily and Luna, he had to take care of himself too. The next week, he called up a therapist he had known from years ago, someone who had helped him through difficult times in the past. It wasn't easy for him to admit that he needed help, but he knew it was time. If he wanted to be the best father he could be, he needed to face his own emotional burdens as well. As he sat down for his first therapy session, Caleb felt a sense of relief. It wasn't easy to open up, but he knew it was the first step in learning how to truly be there for his family. He was no longer just a man running a business empire. He was a father, and that meant being vulnerable, being honest, and doing the hard work of healing. And with that, Caleb began to understand that true strength was not just in protecting others, but also in allowing himself to heal. A little girl beaten by stepfather, as her mother smiled until a millionaire CEO heard her cry, and, "Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much." Caleb had been working tirelessly to help Emily and Luna adjust to their new life. And though there had been challenges, he could see the slow but steady progress. The emotional scars from their past were still very much present, but Caleb could feel the weight of their burdens begin to lighten little by little. Emily, who had once been so withdrawn, was starting to engage more. She spent time drawing, playing with Luna, and occasionally, she would even talk about things from her past, things that made her visibly upset, but also things that, Caleb hoped, were part of the healing process. Luna, on the other hand, was more open, her laughter ringing throughout the house like a sweet melody. She had started to trust Caleb, often running to him when she felt scared or confused. It was clear that the two girls were starting to form attachments, not just to the house, but to Caleb as well. But despite the progress, there were still moments of doubt, moments when Caleb questioned whether he was truly capable of being the father they needed. One evening, as Caleb was finishing up some work in his home office, Emily came to find him. She hesitated in the doorway before speaking. "Caleb, can we talk?" she asked softly. He looked up from his desk, immediately noticing the uncertainty in her eyes. "Of course, Emily. What's on your mind?" She walked into the room, sitting down across from him. Her hands fidgeted nervously in her lap as she looked up at him. "I've been thinking a lot about my mom," Emily began, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb's heart tightened at the mention of her mother. He knew how complicated Emily's feelings about her mother were. He had heard bits and pieces of her story, but Emily had never opened up about it fully. "I don't know if I'm allowed to feel sad about it," she continued, her voice shaky. "I mean, she didn't take care of me. She hurt me." Caleb leaned forward, his expression filled with empathy. "It's okay to feel sad, Emily. It's okay to miss her. Even though what happened was wrong, you can feel both anger and sadness at the same time. You're allowed to have all those emotions." Emily looked at him, her brown eyes wide with uncertainty. "But what if I'm not supposed to miss her? What if that makes me bad?" Caleb shook his head, his voice firm yet gentle. "No, Emily. Missing someone doesn't make you bad. It just means you're human. You're allowed to grieve, even if the person you're grieving didn't treat you the way you deserved." Emily's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, Caleb feared she might pull away. But instead, she let the tears fall, her shoulders shaking with the weight of everything she had been holding inside. Caleb reached out and gently placed his hand on hers. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Emily," he said softly. "But I'm here now, and I will never make you feel like you're not allowed to feel anything." Emily nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Caleb smiled softly. "You don't have to thank me, Emily. I'm here for you. Always." Over the next few days, Emily seemed lighter, as though a small weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She still had her moments of fear, of doubt, but Caleb could see that she was beginning to let go of the burden of guilt she had carried for so long. But it wasn't just Emily who was healing. Caleb was, too. He had spent so much of his life focused on his career, on building an empire. But now he realized that what truly mattered was the family he was building with Emily and Luna. His perspective had shifted in ways he hadn't expected. He didn't need to be the perfect father or the perfect protector. He just needed to be present, to be there for them in the ways that counted. The road ahead was still long, but Caleb felt more certain than ever that this was the path he was meant to be on. A few weeks later, Caleb took Emily and Luna out to a park nearby. It was a sunny day, and the three of them walked together, enjoying the fresh air. Emily and Luna laughed as they ran ahead of him, their carefree joy filling the air. Caleb couldn't help but smile. This was what he had always wanted. This was what he had been missing. As they sat on a bench, watching the girls play, Caleb realized just how far they had come. They had all been through so much, but together, they had found something that had eluded them for so long: peace. Emily rested her head on his shoulder, and for the first time, Caleb felt like everything was right in the world. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew that as long as they were together, they would face it as a family. And that, Caleb thought, was more than enough. A little girl beaten by Stepfather, as her mother smiled until a Millionaire CEO heard her cry and, "Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much." The days seemed to stretch on, each one a mixture of small victories and setbacks. Caleb had never imagined that taking on the role of father would come with so many emotional hurdles, but it also came with moments of profound joy. Emily, though still scarred by her past, had begun to trust him more each day. Luna, ever the curious child, had started to explore the world with a newfound confidence, often running ahead of him, eager to discover new things. There were still rough days, days when the weight of their past seemed to crush them all. But the good days, those were the ones that Caleb clung to. It was on one such day that Caleb found himself looking at the girls as they played in the yard, their laughter filling the air. He was amazed at how far they had come. Emily, once so withdrawn, was now opening up in ways he hadn't expected. She was laughing more, asking questions about the world around her, and most importantly, allowing herself to be a child again. Luna, too, was blossoming. Caleb had watched as she began to sleep through the night without waking up in fear, as she started playing with other kids at school without the hesitations she once had. But even with these beautiful moments, there were still nights where Emily would cry herself to sleep and Luna would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, calling out for someone to comfort her. Caleb had learned to be patient. He knew this wasn't something that could be fixed overnight. Healing took time. One afternoon after school, Caleb decided to take Emily to a local cafe for a one-on-one outing. They hadn't had a chance to spend time alone together in a while, and he wanted to check in with her, see how she was feeling. As they sat in the corner of the cozy cafe, Caleb watched Emily as she stirred her hot chocolate absent-mindedly, her eyes focused on the swirling steam rising from the cup. "So, how's school going?" Caleb asked, trying to open up a conversation. Emily shrugged, not looking up. "It's fine," she said softly. Caleb smiled and leaned in slightly. "Just fine?" he asked, his tone playful. Emily glanced at him and gave a small smile. "I'm doing okay," she said, her voice more sure now. "I'm making friends, I guess." Caleb's heart swelled at her words. "That's great," he said warmly. "I'm really proud of you, Emily." She looked up at him, her expression a mixture of gratitude and hesitation. "You know," she started slowly, "sometimes I still feel different, like everyone else is normal, and I'm not." Caleb's smile faded slightly, and he placed his hand over hers. "Emily, you are normal. What you've been through doesn't make you any less than anyone else." Emily nodded, but Caleb could see the doubt still lingering in her eyes. "I think I'm just scared sometimes," she admitted quietly. "Scared that it's all going to go away, that one day I'll wake up and be back where I was before." Caleb squeezed her hand gently, trying to offer the reassurance he knew she needed. "That's normal too, Emily," he said softly. "It's okay to be scared, but I promise you, you're never going back to that place. Not as long as I'm here." Emily met his gaze, and for the first time in a long time, Caleb saw a glimmer of the hope that had been buried deep within her. "I think I'm starting to believe you," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "Good," he said, "because I believe in you. You're stronger than you think." The rest of their afternoon passed in quiet conversation, Emily slowly opening up more, telling Caleb about her experiences at school, about the things she liked and didn't like, and about the things that still scared her. Caleb listened intently, offering advice when needed, but mostly just listening, showing her that her voice mattered. That night, as they sat down for dinner, Caleb felt a sense of peace wash over him. The house was full of laughter and warmth, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like they were truly a family. Luna, who had been so hesitant to even interact with other children, was now excitedly talking about a new friend she had made. Emily, too, had joined in, her laughter filling the room as she teased Luna about something silly. Caleb watched them, his heart full. This was what he had worked for, what he had fought for. It wasn't always easy, and there were still many battles ahead. But they were moving forward, together. As he tucked Emily into bed that night, she turned to him with a soft smile. "I'm glad I'm here," she said quietly. Caleb smiled and kissed her forehead. "I'm glad you're here too," he whispered. "And I'm never going anywhere." As he left her room, Caleb stood in the hallway for a moment, feeling the weight of the journey they had all been on. The road had been long, but there was something deeply fulfilling in knowing that they were finally on the path to healing. And as he looked down the hall at the two girls, their rooms just a few steps away, Caleb realized that this, right here, was his family, and nothing would ever take that away from him. A little girl beaten by stepfather as her mother smiled until a millionaire CEO heard her cry and, "Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much." The weeks passed, and the progress Caleb had hoped for was beginning to solidify. Emily and Luna had slowly come to understand that they weren't just living in a safe house. They were part of a real family. There was laughter in the halls, and every day they shared new moments, big and small, that brought them closer together. But Caleb knew better than to assume that everything was perfect. The past still lingered in subtle ways. Emily, despite her outward progress, still had nights when she would wake up crying, haunted by memories she couldn't escape. Luna, though more resilient, would occasionally retreat into silence, overwhelmed by a fear she didn't fully understand. Caleb had done everything he could to give them a sense of security. He had brought in professionals to help with their emotional healing, and he made sure they knew they were loved every single day. But deep down, Caleb was struggling with a fear that he hadn't voiced to anyone. What if, despite everything, they couldn't move past the trauma they had endured? What if the scars of their past were too deep? One evening, as the family sat down for dinner, Caleb noticed that Emily was quieter than usual. She barely touched her food and kept staring at her plate, her fork moving aimlessly across the surface. Caleb's heart sank. "Emily?" he asked gently. "Is something wrong?" Emily looked up, her eyes filled with a mix of frustration and sadness. "I'm just tired," she said softly, her voice flat. Caleb knew better than to push her, but the silence between them felt heavy. He had seen this before when Emily's emotions became too much for her to carry. After a few moments, he decided to break the silence. "You know, Emily, it's okay to feel like this," he said, his tone warm and understanding. "It's okay to have bad days. You don't always have to be strong." Emily's eyes welled up with tears, and she bit her lip, trying to hold it together. "I don't want to be a burden," she whispered. Caleb's heart shattered. "Emily, you're not a burden. You never will be. You're my daughter, and I love you," he said firmly, his voice filled with certainty. She looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time in a while, he saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Do you really mean that?" she asked, her voice breaking. Caleb nodded, his hand reaching across the table to gently take hers. "Of course I mean it. I'm here for you, no matter what. You don't have to face this alone." Emily finally allowed herself to cry, her tears flowing freely, as Caleb squeezed her hand. He didn't say anything more, just sat there with her, offering her the comfort and support she needed. Later that evening, as they sat together in the living room, Emily spoke again. "I don't want to feel like this forever," she said quietly. I want to be happy. I want to be the person I used to be. Caleb smiled softly, his heart swelling with love for her. You will, Emily. You're already on the path to healing. It's going to take time, but you'll get there. And I'll be right here with you. Emily nodded, the weight of her emotions still heavy, but with a sense of relief that she had allowed herself to feel them. The next few days brought more ups and downs. Emily continued to attend her therapy sessions, and Caleb noticed that she was starting to open up more to her counselor. Luna, too, was growing more comfortable in her new life, though Caleb could see that the wounds from her past weren't so easily forgotten. Caleb spent more time with them, taking them out for walks, enjoying moments of normalcy. But there were still moments when the reality of their past would surface, like when Emily had a panic attack after seeing a flash of something that reminded her of her old home, or when Luna cried at the sight of a man passing by on the street who resembled her stepfather. These moments were hard, but Caleb never wavered. He had made a promise to them, and he wasn't going to break it. As he tucked Emily into bed one night, she looked up at him with a small, uncertain smile. "Caleb?" she asked softly. "Yes, Emily?" he responded, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I know I have a long way to go," she said, her voice small but filled with determination. "But I think I can do it. I think I can get better." Caleb's heart swelled with pride. "I believe in you, Emily, and I'll always be here, cheering you on every step of the way." That night, Caleb felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from perfection. It was the peace that came from knowing he had done everything he could to give these girls a chance at a better life. And as he sat in his office later that night, staring at the adoption papers he had signed, Caleb realized that he wasn't just giving Emily and Luna a home. They had given him something too, a chance to build a real family, one built on love, trust, and the courage to heal together. And in that moment, Caleb knew that, despite everything they had been through, they were going to be okay. A little girl beaten by stepfather, as her mother smiled until a millionaire CEO heard her cry and, "Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Months had passed since the day Caleb had brought Emily and Luna into his life. And though it hadn't been easy, he knew he had made the right choice. He had seen the growth in both of them, even if it was slow. Emily had become more open, sharing her fears and dreams, while Luna had learned to trust and love the home Caleb had built for them. But there were still days when the weight of their past would fall heavily upon them. Caleb knew they weren't out of the woods yet, but he could see the light at the end of the tunnel. He had always been a man of control, a man who built empires. But with Emily and Luna, he was learning that true strength came from being vulnerable, from allowing himself to feel the pain and the joy that came with being a family. One sunny afternoon, as the three of them sat outside enjoying the warmth of the day, Emily turned to Caleb. "Caleb," she began, her voice quiet, "I've been thinking a lot lately." Caleb smiled and set down his book. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his voice gentle. Emily hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I think I'm starting to believe that everything you said is true, that I can feel safe and happy, that I can heal." Caleb's heart swelled with pride. "I knew you would," he said softly. "You're stronger than you think." Luna, who had been playing with her dolls nearby, ran up to Caleb and jumped into his lap. "Daddy, look!" she exclaimed, holding out a flower she had picked. Caleb smiled, his heart full. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," he said, kissing the top of her head. As they sat together, Caleb realized just how much their lives had changed. They had gone from strangers in pain to a family built on love, patience, and understanding. It hadn't been easy, and there had been moments when Caleb wondered if he was doing the right thing. But seeing the smiles on their faces, hearing the laughter in their home, he knew he had made the right choice. That evening, as he tucked Emily and Luna into bed, he lingered a moment longer, watching them settle into sleep. They had both come so far, and while there were still challenges ahead, Caleb knew they were no longer defined by their past. He had given them a chance at a better life, but they had given him something even more precious, the chance to be part of something real, something worth fighting for. As he turned off the lights and closed the door quietly behind him, Caleb stood in the hallway for a moment, letting the weight of the day settle in. He had always been a man who believed in building and achieving. But with Emily and Luna, he had learned that the most important thing wasn't success, it was love. He wasn't just providing for them. He was helping them heal, helping them find the strength to move forward. And in doing so, he was healing too. That night, as Caleb lay in bed, his thoughts drifted to the future. He didn't know what challenges they might face or what obstacles would come their way. But for the first time in years, Caleb didn't feel afraid. He felt hopeful. He had his family now, and nothing would ever change that. As the days passed, they continued to grow together. Step by step, day by day, Caleb made sure that Emily and Luna had everything they needed: love, security, and a safe place to grow. But more than that, he made sure they knew that they were never alone. He would always be there, no matter what. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but as a family, they could face anything. Caleb smiled as he watched Emily and Luna grow stronger every day. They were no longer the broken, frightened girls who had walked into his life months ago. They were his daughters now, full of hope, full of life, and full of love. And that was all that mattered. Together, they had found their way out of the darkness and into the light. They had found a family, and that was a future worth fighting for.